talking Transition Services. I am the new Director of Transition Services here at Licking County Board. I started in August of last year, so I'm still relatively new, but we're doing some very exciting things with transition and with transition services. So we'll start out with kind of a basic explanation of what transition services entails. Transition services cover people students from the age of 14 to 22. That's the time frame that we look at for kids going basically from high school on into employment or post-secondary education, kind of depending on what their goals are. We try to set up a comprehensive curriculum so students, when they start at age 14, they get services each year throughout the process to help them prepare for post-high school activity. We've been real active in the last 6 months in transition services here at Licking County Board. The very first thing I'll talk about is we developed a transition services brochure, which helps families and students understand exactly what transition services mean. In here, there's a couple of little checklists that you can go through to give you some ideas of what you should be concentrating on and what services might be available to you from the board. So this is a great tool that we just started utilizing. When you talk about transition services, the very first thing that comes to my mind is Employment First. Are you familiar with Employment First?
Yes.
Okay, great, good. So back in 2012, Governor Kasich signed an executive order regarding Employment First, implementing the advisory committee and starting the process towards employment being the preferred outcome for all people with disabilities, which is a substantial change in the way that we used to do things. It used to be that people expected not to be employed. A lot of people with disabilities would be going through the process of high school and then no work afterwards. Now the goal is work after high school, also post-secondary goals. So in your packet of information, you have a team planning guide, which is outlined there first. And the main reason that I hand this out is maybe not so much that you're going to go through every single line item in here, but it gives you the information on the website. It's a good tool to have. Now some folks may decide to go through the planning guide completely. It's fairly involved, but if you're working with a number of folks, it can be very good. If you're working with one individual, it's a good way to organize your thoughts, get some things down on paper, plan for IEP meetings, so that you can write in appropriate employment goals and what the independent living outcomes may be. If there were post-secondary goals, you can put that in play as well. So I think this is a wonderful tool. The thing I might mention is on here the Employment First website is noted. The Employment First website is just full of tools and information and things that you wouldn't get anywhere else. There are planning guides, there are backward planning guides, there's also information on various employers, who the partners are in the process with Employment First. With Employment First, all the big agencies involved in working with people with disabilities got together. And that would be the Department of Developmental Disabilities, Rehab Services Commission, which is now Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, Ohio Department of Mental Health, ODJFS, or Department of Job and Family Services, all got together, and the directors got together and made an agreement that we will all work together to provide transition services for our young students with disabilities. And that's what created this document, which is the Pathways from School to Employment. This is a comprehensive look at everything that you need to get accomplished with your student from age, and they go from age 12 to age 24. And you can see on this document, it sets up a very nice timeline. It says when you're in 12 years old, maybe you're in 7th and 8th grade, these are the things that you should be concentrating on. Now you can also see on this list, there's an awful lot of information in here. It's very comprehensive, going from making sure your IEP goals are in place, making sure that you've established your date of graduation, filling out various assessments, making sure that you're connected with assistive technology. This is really everything. If you went through and did everything on this list for your son or daughter with a disability or the person you're serving, they would be very well prepared for post-high school activities. Once again, I use this as an example because many times this is going to be overwhelming for a family. You can't just look at this and go, okay, I'm going to do everything. Did you have a question?
Yes, why is the cutoff age of 24?
Well, basically they look at adult services. So you go from, and the way that it's structured here at the board is you've got early childhood where you get from birth to age, up to age 6 where you can get services. And then you start transition services at age 14, which is what the law says. So transition services at 14, and then the idea is post-high school, you would go into adult services. The key period being that transition services period.
Okay.
Particularly from my perspective, since I'm the transition services director.
So you did transitions probably as a parent or as a provider.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been through this before and everything, but I mean, it's all about cause. Like I said, when we did people first, we did a thing up in a little town north of here on unemployment rights and stuff. And people first up there and gave the training, right? So, like I say, being in with people first, we've been through most of this stuff already.
That's good.
Yeah, that's great. And that's ideal, because one of the things that we're really concerned about here at the board is, with all these new initiatives going on, we're serving the kids starting at age 14 and going right through and getting that comprehensive list. A lot of those older students, all those young adults, have really missed out on a lot of these services. Now, it's not to say that someone who is 33 years old wouldn't benefit from a comprehensive benefit analysis or a career interest inventory. I think what you can do in that instance, when you've got an older client or an older person that you're working with, is simply move the ages up. You know, if they're already 33, then you start with what you have. You know, make the check marks against the things you've done already, and then fill in the blanks with the rest of them. Because what I don't want to have happen is we lose touch with that older group of folks, because it's just as important for them to be employed.
Yeah.
They'll probably engage the system a little differently, in that they'll be in adult services programs, BVR, independent providers, things like that. So it is important. And all these things will be good for the young adult as they are for the 14 and 15. Also in this packet with the pathways from school to employment, and I think most importantly, is the list of contacts. This last page is the list of websites of everybody who's involved with employment services or with transition services. Talks about the task force and the agencies. Gives you some really good tools to go in and look up more information. I love all the information on here, and I really think this is a great tool. And this can be printed out from the OhioEmploymentFirst.org website as well. Yeah, there's an awful lot in here that can provide information on anything you're really struggling with. One of the things that I look in here and I see the Job Accommodation Network. The Job Accommodation Network has been around for, I know, at least 20 years since I've been in the business. And they are great for providing information about what you need to accommodate someone on the job. So if you have someone who needs, and we'll just throw one out there, an adapted keyboard because they only use one hand to type. They can be a reference for where to get those, how much they'll cost, and any information you need regarding adaptive equipment. That AskJan.org website is great. Have you used them before at all?
No.
And once again, all of these websites, they have a lot of information. The key is to get on and use them and find out how to be functional on them, because you don't want to go in and read a reference paper every single time you need some advice. You just need to go in, get the information you need, and get back out so you can keep serving the person. But a wonderful tool from the Ohio Employment First, which really guides the way that we're doing things here at the Licking County Board of ED. We have taken all the information from the pathways document and broken it down into 3 steps. This is our triangle, and this is a draft of what we're going to be putting out to all the families in transition. But basically, we've broken it down into planning, discovering, and achieving phases, and broken it down by age. And then we've taken on the back and we've put a checklist, a simple checklist. This one is for families and students. So from age, 13 to 15, you want to be concentrating on exploring your occupational and career interests, determining your SSI eligibility, developing your students' skills, preferences, interests, and support needs. A simple 5-step process, making it much more manageable for families. This document came as a result, just so you know where we're coming from, of this document. This is all the information that is contained in here. We put it in here and made it color-coded so people would know what was their responsibility. This is also unmanageable. No one can figure this out. It took me a month to figure this out. So we've kind of slimmed it down to make it a manageable checklist for our families so that we can stop and go, okay, have they had a comprehensive benefit analysis? Do they know how much money they can make before they need to consider paying back or being concerning their SSI benefits? So this is a wonderful tool that we're going to utilize a lot more going forward. Any questions about this?
No.
No? Okay. As you read through this, one of the things that's really important for us to understand is this is all idea development. We want to make sure that we get information into the provider's hands so that they can start to think, oh, you know what? Janie hasn't had her SSI eligibility considered. She hasn't applied for that yet. We need to get on the ball and do that. And once that's completed, you want to make sure that you get a comprehensive benefits analysis so you know how much you can work. So you know what work incentives are available to Janie so that she can go and get on the job. Because there are a lot of available incentives that'll keep people on the job, which is great. Also, what we want to do is drive people to their service coordinators. So as people start to think about these things, they think, oh, can my service coordinator help me set that up? And many times, and I would say in almost all cases, they have a contact where they can help set up families, help connect people to the community, and get them out into the workforce, which is really the goal of all of our efforts.
I see driver's education on here. Is there a school or a program yet that would specialize anything regarding driver's education for those served through DD?
There are none specifically, but I know that there are a number of programs that are working on that, that they're trying to get various programs in Lincoln County for folks. I've heard of a couple, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. A couple of the schools are doing programs. But increasingly, we want to push those kinds of things. When you're 13 years old and you think about driver's ed, it seems a long way away. When you're 16, it's vital. And then there's a lot of kids who are 18, 19, 20 who have just kind of given up on that. We want to revisit that and say, you know what? Let's revisit that transportation. Because one of the big issues for all people with disabilities, getting to and from work. Transportation is the bugaboo for every agency that I talk to. So if we can start thinking about that when they're 13, 14, 15, maybe we'll have it figured out by the time they're 17, 18, 19. One of the things that I want to mention, and it's as a result of my involvement in Medicaid services, is the CMS, the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services. They just came out with a new rule regarding home and community-based services, which aligns very closely with person-centered planning and this transition process of getting people into the community. Going forward, it just came out March 17th, so going forward, the Medicaid services that people are able to provide are going to be linked to their ability to get into the community and get into employment situations. So hopefully we'll be able to work together with CMS and with the HCBS information so that we can get people out in the community. There'll be a lot more information coming regarding the CMS rules. The state has to have a transition plan in order by next March. And we'll see if that happens. It's a difficult process.
Yes.
Any questions about transition services so far?
No, like I say, I've pretty much been through it before and everything, and besides that, my daughter, she is my son's guardian, and she used to be the service coordinator, so.
Oh, that's nice.
That's a good tool to have, right?
Yes. So, yeah, I mean, yes, and she's kept up with quite a bit of the stuff,
That's good.
probably being his guardian, as she had to,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's a key. It brings up a good point about collaboration. One of the things that Transition Services and the Employment First Initiative has set up is a collaborative environment. We want to make sure that the service coordinator, the teacher, the intervention specialist, the job coach, if they have a job coach through BVR, whoever is the service provider, that we're all talking. That we are all going to the same meetings, we're setting up the same goals, we're considering the person first and making sure that we're meeting their goals and their interests. And if we're all at the same meeting together, we're all able to do that.
Yeah, it helps.
Yeah.
A lot.
I've spent about 6 months working with the schools in Licking County, the special education directors in Licking County, just collaborating on getting the service coordinators and the teachers to the IEP meetings for goal development. And we've seen a huge increase in that relationship. People are going to the IEP meetings, they're providing good transition goals for students so that the outcomes will be more positive for those students. We've also worked real closely with ODJFS in Licking County in making sure that our job development efforts are coordinated so that we have one job developer who's going out for all the people with disabilities that work with Licking County PD. So that we get one message out to the community that our people are ready to go to work and we're going to be coming. So that's exciting. It's a real exciting time to be in transition services.
Yes.
And that job developers, like between us and JFS, right?
Correct.
Are
We
they out
share
of the
that.
one stop?
Yes, they are out of the one stop.
Okay.
Ohio Means Jobs. And they've been a wonderful organization to work with, in a large part because they also serve the community at large. So bringing our clients and people that we work with in DD into where everybody else goes in the community. It's more integration, it's more real world experience for our people, and it gets them involved in regular community with their peers, which is vital. That's where all the learning takes place. Any other questions about transition, employment first?
Nope.
All right.
You could sum up just one final statement, just what transition services is. What it
So
does.
back in my office, I have a whiteboard that has my equation on it. So commitment plus collaboration equals effective transition. Basically, it requires a commitment on behalf of all the participants, the providers, all the agencies that we work with, to put their money and their effort towards collaborating with each other and making sure that we get that person out into the community with a job and a future. And that's the simple equation. It takes commitment, it takes time, we need to collaborate, that results in a good outcome for people. That's as simply put as I can.
Very good. How many kids are in that transition age group right now?
We currently serve about 248 people between the ages of 14 and 22
Wow.
in Lincoln County.
I think that's a number that's a lot larger than what most people think that it would
It
be.
is, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that I did, is pulled that report when I first started and got all the names, got their graduation dates, whether or not they had an open BVR case, whether or not they've had assessments, and making sure that we start moving forward immediately for those 248 kids. because all of them are at different places. All of them have different goals, and we need to get a good handle on who they are and where they're going.
Did a lot of them like those since the transition there?
A number of them did. A number of those folks were a little older. They've been around a little bit longer. Transition Services, a lot of these folks are in high school. And since LICO closed its doors, front doors, about a year ago, they weren't bringing any more people in, so those people went out into adult services in the community. So quite all of the high schools have got people on our caseloads across the county. And the schools have been great to work with. Really excited about getting some assistance from our service coordinators and from anybody who would help. Because the teachers are doing their job, they're trying to implement their curriculum and get people through to graduation. They need some help getting people into the community so that we can get them back into jobs.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much. If you have any questions about transition services, my name and information are on the front of this brochure. Send me an email. Probably the best way to get a hold of me is an email, since I'm out and about meeting with folks all the time. Don't hesitate to send me an email if you have a question. Thank you.